Luma and the House of Quiet Mirrors. The night lay soft upon the land, and quiet gathered like a shawl over trees and water and the low fields on the far edge of the path. Luma woke beneath an old oak whose roots cradled the earth as if it were a sleeping friend. Her fur held a gentle sheen the color of silver blue, and the small light at the tip of her tail glimmered as if it had listened all evening and now wished to speak. She felt a tug in the hush, a friendly pull, a beckoning that was less a sound than a delicate leaning of the world itself. She rose and set out, paws whispering across moss, nose tasting the cool in the air, ears turning to the smallest rustle. The path curved through ferns and past stones deeply settled into the ground, and as she walked she felt a sense of expectancy, as if a door somewhere ahead had been left slightly open. Beyond a stand of willows she found a slope that led to a low valley cupped like two hands. In the valley sat a long quiet house with many windows and one open door. The house was simple and clean, its boards weathered to the color of river bark, its windows faintly aglow as if they remembered the evenings they had seen. Luma paused, listening. A gentleness drifted from within, a feeling like the last page of a book being turned without hurry. She stepped through the doorway and found herself in a wide hall lined with large old mirrors. Each mirror held a soft light, and on each frame lay a thin lace of dust that caught the glow like frost on a leaf. A small sound touched the air, the hush that follows a sigh, and from a shadowed corner came a caretaker, a cat with pale whiskers and calm eyes the color of tea. The cat wore a simple bell without voice and moved with the ease of one who knows every floorboard by heart. "Welcome," said the cat without speaking aloud, for the house lent its voice to those who tended it. "This is the House of Quiet Mirrors. Some mirrors keep the echo of a day until that day releases it. Some hold a reflection that needs patience before it can settle. We clean, we wait, we listen. Will you walk with me while the night is gentle?" Luma lowered her head in agreed greeting. Together they moved along the hall. On the first wall stood a tall mirror with a frame of carved reeds. Within it she saw a river path she did not know, and on that path a pair of footprints appeared and faded, as if someone paced there long ago and could not decide to turn back or to continue. Luma breathed in and let her breath go slowly, and the cat brushed the frame with a soft cloth the color of rain. The footprints slowed, then paused, then became a single set heading on at an easy pace. The surface of the mirror smoothed as if water had grown still. "Thank you," said a feeling in the air, and the cat nodded as if to an old friend. They came to a second mirror round as a pond. Inside it the image of gentle rain fell but never reached the ground. Drops hung in the air, waiting for permission to rest. Luma sat with her tail curled warm around her paws and listened to the imagined tapping. She placed her nose lightly to the glass, not pressing, simply greeting. The drops began to fall. They touched earth that had waited a long time for the cool of them, and a scent like a field after summer rose and made the hall feel wider. The rain passed, the last small drop bowing itself into the soil. The mirror exhaled, "If a mirror can do such a thing," and the cat whispered, "There now, that is better." Farther along they found a narrow mirror whose frame was inlaid with tiny letters made of mother of pearl. Within the glass words drifted, some clear, some faint as chalk at the edge of a board. A few words trembled as if they had been meant to be said but never found the moment. Luma looked at them and felt no rush. She breathed and the cat breathed and the house itself seemed to breathe in turn. One by one the words arranged themselves into a brief note that read, "I am here when you are ready." The letters settled and grew warm, then folded into the clear surface like embers sinking into ash. The mirror shone with a clean quiet and they moved on. They entered a room where mirrors were arranged like windows around a small cedar bench. Here the light was softer and the air held a sweetness like dried apples and old wood. In one mirror lay a shore made of pale stones. Waves came and went with the patience of someone waiting for a friend who is certainly coming. Along the shore rested a dozen shells. Luma watched as the water lifted them and set them down, and with each small lift a memory rose and returned, until the rhythm itself was the memory and the shells had only to listen. The cat sat and closed its eyes, content to let time pass without measure. When they opened their eyes, the shells had arranged themselves in a slow spiral that pointed toward a brighter part of the shore. "That will do," the cat seemed to say, and they stood to continue. In a small alcove a mirror wore a frame of tiny bells that made no sound. Within that glass Luma saw a child asleep in a chair with a book open on their lap. The pages lifted and fell with the easy breath of rest. A question hovered at the edge of the scene, a question that was not urgent, a question that had already forgiven itself for waiting until morning. Luma offered a silent yes, not to the question but to the rightness of its patience. The book closed without hurry and the chair rocked itself once like a wave kissing sand. The light in the alcove softened. They walked on with steps that felt slower and kinder. At the center of the house stood a long hall with a high ceiling crossed by simple beams. Mirrors leaned on either side, some wrapped in linen, some uncovered and awake. In one glass Luma saw the reflection of the hall itself, yet in that reflection the hall was longer, and at its end sat a door with a round handle the color of honey. The cat nodded toward it. "The mirror is honest," the cat said without words. "The door is real. It only appears in the reflection when a visitor has offered the right kind of attention. You have offered that. If you wish, you may go there now." Luma bowed, grateful, and turned to face the actual hall. As she began to walk, the floor seemed to grow more patient under her paws, and the boards gave a soft greeting with each step. The door at the end of the real hall was as the mirror had shown, round-handled and warm to the eye. Luma touched the handle, and it turned with the willingness of a friend. Beyond lay a round room without corners. The floor was cedar, The walls were lined with low shelves, and upon those shelves stood small round mirrors set into simple wooden rings. Each ring had a little tag of linen tied to it with a thread, and on each tag a word, not a name but a mood, or a season, or a sense. Quiet rain. Warm bread. Old stone beside water. Morning birds heard through a window that is still closed. Luma felt as if she had stepped into a bowl that held all the gentle moments that do not ask to be larger than themselves. The cat sat beside the door and waited. Luma walked the circle slowly. She lifted one mirror and saw a path lined with birch, white trunks tall and luminous against soft shade. The word on the tag read return. She lifted another, saw a table laid with simple cups, steam rising, a place for any visitor to sit. The tag said welcome. A third mirror held a scene of a garden gate left open on purpose, a garden that promised not surprise but ease. The tag said again. Luma placed each mirror back where it belonged, and the room seemed to brighten by a breath. In the middle of the round room stood a low stool. Above it hung a single small mirror whose ring bore no tag at all. Luma looked into it and saw nothing but a soft light like mist over a river at first dawn. She waited and the light gathered and then calmed. A thought came to her as a leaf might fall. The house does not trap reflections. It keeps them only until they are ready to walk back into the day without pulling where they were once snagged. She felt a quiet agreement that needed no words. The cat rose and touched its nose lightly to her shoulder, then led her back through the high hall and into a narrower passage where the scent of cedar gave way to lavender and linen. In a mirror there she saw a bed in a small room with a window looking out over a plain of grass. The bed was made, the pillow fluffed by an invisible hand, the window open just enough for night to breathe. The cat looked from the glass to Luma and then to the actual door beside them. Inside the room all was as in the mirror, and more, for rooms always carry a little extra that a mirror cannot hold. The quilt was stitched in tiny squares the color of wheat and cream. A bowl of water sat on a stool near the bed, and beside it a sprig of mint, simple and bright. Rest if you like, the house seemed to say by way of the cat. Luma drank from the bowl and let the coolness settle, then stepped onto the bed and lay upon the quilt, which gave the sense that many had rested there and had been well met by sleep. The window allowed a soft line of night to flow in and meet the line of the room. Outside, a cricket sang every so often as if to say I am here and also everything else is here too. In the quiet she felt the house breathe with her, not asking her to do anything, not asking her to remember or to forget, only to be exactly as she was and to let the room take some of her weight. Her eyes half closed. A faint bell sounded in some other part of the house, and the cat, who had been a little pool of stillness on the floor, rose and slipped away to some task that needed the light touch of an old friend. Luma stayed where she was and watched the thin curtain at the window lift and settle. Minutes eased by and then something like the length of a deep breath that lasts a while longer. She felt as if she floated in a cup of warm water, held and buoyed and free to drift. Thoughts that had come with her to the door of the house set themselves down and folded into smaller shapes that no longer pressed. The ceiling beams were quiet companions. The quilt kept its promise to warm and to steady without holding too tightly. After resting, she rose and returned with careful steps to the long mirrored hall. A new mirror had awakened, a small one at knee height, and in it Luma saw the house as it would look when morning came. The windows held a hint of light, the hall waited, the door stood open. In the mirror the house thanked the night and stretched itself to greet whoever would come next. Luma touched the frame with her paw and felt a sense of completion like a soft knot tied to finish a ribbon. She found the cat again near the entrance. The bell on its collar gave no tone, and yet something like a tone lingered in the air around it, a quiet that rang. "Thank you," said the house through the cat. "You walked slowly enough for the mirrors to remember what they were made to do." Luma lowered her head in thanks as well. She stepped through the open door into the cooled valley. Fog had unfolded over the grass while she was inside, a gentle blanket that lay low and moved like sleeping breath. The willows at the slope watched without judgment. The path was the same as before and not the same, for returning changes a path in the way a story changes a listener. Luma moved along the way she had come, and the fog wrote and unwrote her steps so that even the ground seemed to be practicing letting go. On the edge of the valley the moth returned for a moment, brushed the air near her ear, and drifted away without asking her to follow. Near the willow roots the turtle had found a patch of damp soil and was content to make a slow circle upon it again and again. Far up in a tree an owl regarded the path and then blinked, which is a language of its own. From a thicket there came a quiet rustle and a small drift of leaves that looked very much like the laugh of a fox spirit who keeps no schedule. Luma carried each small meeting as one carries a smooth stone in a pocket, not to weigh down the fabric but to reassure the hand that there is something present and friendly. The air held a taste like the first sip of water after a long walk. When she reached the oak where she had begun, the roots welcomed her with the ease of an old cushion that knows the shape of the one who rests there. She curled herself into that cradle and felt the body of the earth beneath her body, a quiet layered with more quiet. The small light at her tail tip softened to a glow like a candle that has decided to watch over a room rather than announce itself. She let her breath become the simplest thing that breath can be, a tide without a storm, a wave that reaches sand and returns to the water and repeats without any need to count. The house with its mirrors remained in her mind not as a structure but as a way of being, a practice of seeing gently and of letting what wishes to settle finally settle. Now the night leaned nearer, and Luma allowed her weight to sink. Her paws softened, her shoulders grew warm and loose, her jaw unclenched as if a hand had opened from a fist back into a hand that could hold a small kindness. She let the image of the round room float up, the little mirrors with tags, the nameless ring above the stool, the note that had once read, "I am here when you are ready." She imagined that someone somewhere found that note just when they needed it. She imagined the rain that finally reached soil. She imagined shells that listened until the listening itself was the memory. Every imagined thing grew lighter once it was allowed to be complete. Her breath lengthened like a path that has no reason to shorten. The ground below her promised to carry the rest of the way. "If you are listening," said the night through the leaves, "you may let your own footsteps appear and fade on whatever path you once paced. You may watch the rain you kept aloft finally touch the place that longed to drink. You may allow words to form their quiet promise and then fold into calm. You may sit beside the bench of cedar and watch a simple shore. You may close the window just enough to keep comfort near and open it just enough to welcome the small song of a cricket. You may lie upon a quilt a little warm from someone who rested well before you. You may accept that the door is open in reflection and open in the hall of the heart. And when you are ready you may rest, not because you must but because rest is a room you are always allowed to enter." Luma listened and agreed without speaking. She gathered herself as a tide gathers, not to rise into difficulty but to lift and to lower in a kindness that never hurries. The oak drew its leaves close and the field spread its comfort wide. In her chest the small steady lantern of the fruit she did not eat and the mirrors she did not keep and the rain she did not hold moved and arranged themselves into a still pattern that felt like home. The night smoothed a hand across her eyes. Her breathing eased and then eased more. If a thought knocked softly, she let it know that the house down in the valley was tending it and that nothing important would be forgotten. And the thought, hearing this, went to its own room and drew a blanket over itself and slept. Sleep is a door that is not locked. Sleep is a bowl that holds without pressing. Sleep is the fog that writes your prints and then unwrites them so the ground can be ground again and not a page. Sleep is a mirror that learns it is a window and then learns it is simply light. Luma rested and the world rested with her, which is another way of saying that the world had been resting already and now she noticed. In that noticing there was peace wide enough to share. The oak held its breath for a count that belonged to trees, and the valley breathed out the last of its work for the evening. And if there was a bell somewhere deep in the house with no voice to ring it, the night rang it anyway by growing even more still. You can rest now. You can feel the quilt rise beneath your back even if it is only the feeling of the ground. You can taste the mint and the cool water even if they are only memories told to the tongue to remind it that gentleness exists. You can see the door with the round handle and you can turn it and you can enter the room where your weight is welcome. The crickets will keep their rhythm and the window will keep its inch open and the air will keep its slow exchange of this for that. There is nothing in this hour that demands a reply. There is nothing in this hour that needs you to pace. There is only the softness of the hall and the clean face of a mirror that is willing to hold what you bring until it is ready to go back with you untroubled. Luma slept. She slept as water holds a fallen leaf. She slept as a chair rocks itself once and then remembers it can be still. She slept as a field accepts rain and lets the scent climb and then fade and then remain in a way that does not need to be named. Her tail light glowed like a firefly that has chosen one patch of evening and made a little home there. If her paws twitched, it was only because the ground likes to dance that way with those who trust it. Time poured itself into a wider bowl and lost its edges. Morning would come some other time, but not yet, not before every mirror that wished to clear had cleared and every footstep that wished to continue had continued and every shell that wished to listen had listened.